Coming up next on the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
It was me and one guest, and the wind came up, and we were way upriver, so I didn't even know, and we didn't have communication devices. So I came out of the river, just a little bit before we were supposed to get picked up, and it looked like the Bering Sea. The lake was huge. It was this big east wind, and that's just a terrible situation. And the owner of the air service flew a beaver out to pick us up, and it was like there was a bear that was messing with us.
That was Kate Crump on one of her first Alaskan bush stories, King Salmon, the Naknek, and giant rainbows, today on The Swing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how you doing today? Thanks for stopping by the show. Quick and easy way to support this podcast is to click through our sponsors' websites. Head over to wetflyswing.com/sponsors right now, and you can click in and take a look at some of those amazing products, amazing local brands from around the country. Today's episode is sponsored by Togens Fly Shop, who provides superior quality products at an affordable price, an amazing resource for fly tying materials, tools, and fishing accessories. Since 2005, Togens has been over-delivering on price, service, and passion, and now you can check out that Togens buzz for yourself. Right now, you can head over to wetflyswing.com/Togens to get started. That's Togens. You support this podcast by clicking through that link to Togens online. Established in 1928, Dette Flies is the oldest family-run fly shop in the world, now in their 94th year. Dette's mission has always been to supply the fly fishing community with the finest products and services. Every fly they sell is either tied in-house or by a handful of select domestic tyers. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/Dette to grab your in-house flies today. That's wetflyswing.com/Dette, Dette, to support this podcast and the oldest fly shop in the world. Kate Crump is here today to take us on a journey of what it's like to be an owner and run an Alaskan lodge. We find out how this all came to be, and we also find out how to swing flies for king salmon, why this place is so remarkable with the large, crazy-sized fish, including rainbows. And also, we find we get a little bit on their steelhead operation in the lower 48. Kate's also got some good advice on becoming a guide and what it's been like for her. So here we go. Kate Crump from the lodge at 58north.com. How you doing, Kate?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for putting a little time together to talk Alaska. And we're going to dig into what you have going at your lodge. And your name has been popping around, I think you and Justin, for quite a while. So I think you're one of those guests that I've been trying to get on for a while, and we finally got you here. So I'm excited to talk about all that. And I guess now you're just getting ready, right, to head up to Alaska, or you're up there now, but you're getting ready for the season.
Yes, we're getting ready for the season. I've been up here since April 17th and Justin April 5th. So we are working on a bunch of projects. And so we open on June 17th as our first group of guests. And I was just walking around 2 days ago and realizing, and even yesterday, realizing how many projects are happening right now. We have a crew of, I think there's 9, 10 of us today. They're friends, they're family, and I've got Justin's parents. Justin's mom is helping me move all this equipment, like nails and screws and tools and chargers. We have so many cordless chargers, and we put them into this greenhouse so that if we have weather and just to have a place to put this stuff while we're building that isn't inside the main lodge, right? And everyone has to come in and out. So she and I are doing that. I got 12,000 steps in yesterday. And then I looked to my left, and our friend Nate from Montana, he is on our excavator, and he is redoing our road. So we have a more of a circular driveway, and sort of eliminating, we had this huge driveway pad because we had to bring in this giant crane to set the beams on our lodge last year. So we had all this pit run fill that needs to be minimized to make a more beautiful landscape. And so he's running around on the excavator, smoothing things out. And I want to remind you, like, everything's still frozen. This is a really late winter. And I've been like talking to people kind of all over the country. Everyone's like, yes, it's still winter here too. But here in Alaska, our ground is completely frozen still. So digging around in the dirt and that kind of thing, it gets a little hard, right? And then just past the driveway, off the side of the lodge, is my husband Justin and two other friends, and they are building a fire pit. So they're making this like really cool octagonal wooden fire pit that kind of is down below, so you can kind of sit on the edge. You can cook on it if you wanted. It's a design that my friend Jeremy Koreski gave us, so we're super excited about that. But in order to so they are repurposing the wood from the deck on what we call Quiz's cabin, or cabin 1. It's a guest cabin, and it just had this big wraparound deck, and the walkway kind of along the property and down to the boats, and the airplane walked on that deck. So I was like, hey, let's get the traffic off of these guest cabin deck, right? Like, let's do a walkway. And also, like, let's match the deck with the lodge deck. So like more of a cedar decking that kind of just comes out in like more of a modern feel. Let's kind of match that all in the same process. So they're reusing these boards to make the fire pit. So there's a big process of like, you know, you have to pull everyone up, you have to pull all the screws out, and then you gotta, so it doesn't look fun.
Is this like a complete remodel, or is this something where the lodge is, I'm not even familiar with? Maybe you could start there. Maybe talk about first, you know, where you're at, and then is this a full remodel?
Okay, yes. So we are in Bristol Bay, Alaska, which is just an amazing, incredible place. The headwaters of our river is in Katmai National Park, which is over 4 million acres. And then just on the edge of that is Becharof Wildlife Refuge. So more public land that's over 1 million acres. And all of this area is very much roadless. We are considered the village of King Salmon, which is connected by a road to the village of Naknek. So there is sort of this amazing ability to be on the road system, but it's the shortest highway in America. It's 15 miles long. There's no roads that bring you to this highway. The only way you can get here is by airplane or boat. And in the village of Naknek is a huge commercial fishing industry. And most people have maybe heard of Bristol Bay because of the proposed Pebble Line. And so we're very excited to see that is being halted right now.
That's good. We can get an update on that too, because we had Trout Unlimited on about a year ago, and the person that was leading that, she gave us an update. So yeah, maybe we can get an update on that later in the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, even to back up just a little bit further, when Justin and I started our own business guiding in Bristol Bay here, we had worked for a lodge for a number of years, and it was a great experience. And we broke out on our own. And around that time, the owner of this lodge property, it was run as a do-it-yourself kind of cabin property. He had approached us and he said, hey, I'm going to be wanting to sell this soon, and I'd really like to sell to you guys. And that was such an honor to get that phone call. And also, I had always said since my very first year, which was 2008 on this river, I was like, gosh, this is the best spot on the river to have a lodge. And if I was crazy enough to have a lodge, I would want this one. Well, I am crazy enough, because in 2020, he said, okay, I'm going to be ready to sell at the end of the 21 season. And I was Justin and I both like, wow, we're so glad it wasn't 2020.
Right. The start of COVID.
Yeah, it would have been an awful year to try to operate, right? It would have been so hard. So we closed in October 2021 and took the keys to the property. It's funny because there's no such thing. It's just like remote and you don't need keys. But we took the property, and what we realized is that in order to do this, like, we're just two people. We don't have like this huge financial backing, right? A lot of lodges here, especially, are there's usually like a pretty wealthy person that is sort of helping fund it or start it or that kind of thing. So we can't afford to not open for a season while we do all the things we need to do. One of those including building a brand new lodge building. and also remodeling all of the cabins so that our guests have a nice place to stay. Because it was operated as a do-it-yourself property, there wasn't a central space where everyone came together and meals were cooked and that kind of thing. All of the cabins had little kitchenettes in them. So we realized that the one thing that we, there's many things we lacked, time was going to be the biggest crunch for us. And so we had been obviously pre-planning this for years, how it would happen. And so we stayed. Justin, our season ends about the middle of October, and Justin and I stayed until the middle of December. And friends came and helped. Some of our staff stayed and helped. And we just gutted all of the cabins as much as we could. And we just took stuff away, and we tried to give it away in the community and things like that. Just all the things that we knew we weren't going to use. And we also had lined up our builder, and he had a lot of experience building in this area. So he had a lot of connections. And also his name is Jim Hines. He is just like a stud. He is going to get the job done no matter what. And so they came and put in what they call helical piers. And those are these big, giant, heavy piers with like a corkscrew on the bottom. And you drive them into the ground based on the depth and the pressure that you need for the structure that you're building. And the beauty of those is that because we have this permafrost and everything is freezing, the ground is freezing, we get tons of upheaval. One of our cabins this year we came back is like 3 feet higher in the back.
Oh, wow. Oh, because it's the tundra, right? You're on the tundra.
We're on the tundra, yes. And so you'll get just like things become sort of like a fun house, right? You got like this spot's elevated. Even our house was, we have a house in the village of King Salmon where we live off the property. Our deck is like super wonky this year, and this year they got more snow than like recorded in the last 50 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I actually just in the last couple of days have been able to walk down my walkway to get into the house. There's been so much snow we had to like go around, because we weren't here to plow it through the winter and stuff. We spend the winters in Oregon guiding.
Gotcha. Wow. So you got a serious operation there and serious project going on. I mean, is the Naknek River, is that the river you guys fish, or are there a bunch of rivers you hit?
So that's our home water that we're based on. And then we have a float plane at Havilland Beaver, and we fly into Katmai National Park. We fly into Becharof Wildlife Refuge. We fly over to the Nushagak for King Salmon.
Gotcha. So you got your plane. And are you flying it, or you have somebody flying it?
No, but someday, Dave, that's definitely a dream of mine.
You should live that dream, because I know this goes way back, but LineSpeedJedi, we had this episode way back at the start, and he was telling this story about how he was up in Alaska, and then he just started talking about how he was flying this beaver into Alaska. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you telling me you can fly planes? He's like, oh, yeah, I just learned. I picked it up. It sounds like when you're Alaska, you just kind of pick up and do what, you know what I mean? You kind of do what you want. Is that how it feels up there for you?
Oh my gosh. It's constantly like learning how to do something new, because there isn't somebody. Like a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, my sink isn't working or it's leaking. Yeah. And they're like, oh, just call the plumber.
See, that's exactly what's going on right now to us. Like our sink is leaking, and we're like, okay, well, I guess we call the plumber, and it's going to cost some money, but that's what we do. But up there, yeah, you can't call the plumber.
No, Dave, you got to get a pipe wrench. First you got to get under there and figure out like, why is it leaking? And then you got to problem solve. And then, okay, get a pipe wrench. We got to tighten this up, or like, there is no like, call somebody, right? You're like, okay, there's a problem. How do we fix it? Does anybody here in our circle have experience with this? No? Okay, I guess that means I have to figure it out, right? And the internet doesn't work, so we can't YouTube it.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. Gosh, cool. Well, so you got the Naknek, which is actually, I mean, as far as rivers, we've done a little bit of some episodes up there. I think there's some other, I'm sure, there's other lodges right up around there and some other stuff going on. But it seems like it's one of the rivers that's just got these giant rainbows. I mean, are rainbows the species that people are coming up for? What do you think? When people are coming to your camp, what are they coming for?
So that's one of the most amazing things about Alaska and Bristol Bay specifically, is we're constantly changing. And so just when you're like in this mode of like, wow, I got this fishery figured out, or I'm so tired of doing this, good, because you're going to be doing something else tomorrow. And so we have people that come up in the fall specifically for the big rainbows, and the preferred method is to swing flies for them, and they're aggressive and they're very healthy, just amazing fish.
This is one thought I didn't want to miss, because on the last one we talked Naknek, the person that we interviewed, Dry Fly John, I'm sure you know of him. I think the lodge where he's at, but he's in the Midwest of, so he doesn't fish for steelhead. So I don't think we talked about the difference, but what is the difference between one of those big Alaskan Bristol Bay rainbows on the swing versus a winter steelhead?
These big rainbows are actually eating. They're aggressively feeding, and they're not going somewhere to spawn. Their purpose to be in the river during that time is to feed. They're like the bears who in the fall are like, okay, the clock is ticking, winter is coming, and I need to just go full on feeding. And they've been doing that for a couple months, but now it's like this sort of desperate feed.
Gotcha. So my guess is it's easier to hook these big giant rainbow, like 10-pound rainbow, right? Or whatever they get up to on a swung fly. Is the technique similar to what you'd be doing winter steelhead?
It's very similar. And I think what's so fascinating to me is that this is got to be the world's greatest swung fly rainbow fishery in the world. I don't think that there's anywhere that you could put up against this place. And so I don't have like this religious fanaticism about how people should fish. My philosophy has always been what makes you happy and where you drive joy and how you can be present and how you take care of the fish, however you catch them. But I do tend to find myself kind of getting religiously fanatical about this because it is the greatest swung fly fishery for rainbows in the world. And so I see people, if they're like using like bobbers and spinning rods, I'm just like, oh, really? Like, or even like nymphing. And I have done that too. So I'm not like, oh, I'm the Pope on this, but it's just so special and it's so cool.
Yeah. I think it's probably the comparison you probably know is probably like, and again, I have nothing against, you could do whatever you love to do, right? Whether that's even bait fishing or anything, but yeah. I mean, it's like the Deschutes. It's, you know what I mean? You're there, swinging flies is kind of what it's about. If you're nymphing, or even the North, like any of these rivers, the Askina, right? You name the Steelhead River. It seems like, man, if you're out there nymphing, it's like, wow, you're missing swinging up a fish, which is the ultimate.
Yeah. I just don't have that around any other place because I just have so many friends that like derive joy from these other methods. And I have too, and do. So I kind of just can't get on board with like, there's only one way to do this. I just don't think that that's giving service to life and people and relationships, but I tend to with this one, like, cause it's that special. It is the world's greatest. So, but we have people that come up in June specifically for king salmon. We have people that come up for like a king salmon. I mean, because the Nushagak is the world's, here I am like printing all these world's greatest, but it's the world's largest run of king salmon left in the world.
Oh, it is. Right. So
yes.
So now that the king salmon, you hear about these really crazy stories of the downturns in kings up there, even in Alaska, which seems like, wow, right? That would never happen. But are you not seeing the same downturn in your runs there in the Nushagak?
Oh, gosh, we are certainly seeing that. And a lot of that is like management. And because the king salmon are coming in at the same time as the sockeye salmon. And here we go again, world's greatest, but it's, but Bristol Bay has the largest return of wild sockeye salmon left in the world. So we have all these world's greatest.
This is great. I love that you're saying this because, and you have a little bit of the conservation background, so you know about this, but why is, sockeye, kings, rainbow trout, why is it the world's great? Why are there so many fish there and not in other places in Alaska? Because you do have other Southeast Alaska, you got up north of you, up on the Kuskokwim, right, and all this stuff. Why is this place you're at so special?
Well, for starters, these huge lakes are these basically safe oceans, for salmon. They're just like these incredibly pristine areas that are not changing that dramatically. So you have excellent habitat. And if you place Alaska versus like the West Coast, we've destroyed habitat, right? Our estuaries we build cities on our estuaries, and then the rivers that flow into the estuaries, we concrete pave them to make them fit into our world and what we quotations need to get resources in and out of these places and these cities. We just don't have that. There's no big industry that's just like leaking or recreating the habitat. And so that's very special. This area is managed for sockeye salmon. It's a huge industry and has been for hundreds of years. And like Justin's family is like, can just like keep tracing back in their roots, like members of the family that came up in commercial fished in the sail. I mean, they used to fish out of sailboats up here in Bristol Bay.
Wow. Are you both you and Justin from the lower 48, or where are you guys from?
So Justin is fourth generation Edmonds, Washington. So just north of Seattle. So his family has all been some way, shape, or form part of the commercial fishing industry. His dad sold rope and gloves mostly to commercial fishing groups, and his uncle Terry, who's here right now helping us, and he's a Vietnam vet and just an incredible dude. He started Seattle Marine in Naknek, so he built the building and that business in Naknek. So it's just a cool thing. In fact, I took everyone yesterday on a field trip to the Bristol Bay Historical Museum, and like it's an amazing museum. It's the small museum in the oldest house built in Naknek, and this gal Larice Egley is the executive director, and she has like built and gathered all of these artifacts from the commercial fishing industry, the native culture. And so there's just all this information to learn. So it was really cool to take the Crumps and kind of show them some of the history here and have them tell stories. Yeah.
That is cool. Wow. Yeah. Naknek's kind of down towards near the confluence, right? That's the lowest little town there.
Yeah. It's right at the mouth of the Naknek flowing into Bristol Bay, or it's Quejack Bay and then Bristol Bay.
Oh, Quejack. Yeah. Gosh, this is great. Wow. So basically that's it. So Bristol Bay it's got these huge lakes, and it's got management, maybe practices that are a little bit better potentially than some other parts of Alaska. Is that kind of, yeah. Yes.
They are good. They definitely have their own issues, but they are good in the sense that by managing for sockeye, they are kind of managing for the most amount of sockeye to be commercially harvested. And then there's this thing called escapement. And if you're in Alaska during the summer months, you know all about escapement because they regulate commercial industry based on the number of sockeye salmon that escape into each of the rivers. There's 5 major rivers that flow into Bristol Bay. So what they've done is try to kind of like figure that number out so it produces the most amount of sockeye that will return to the area. So they're letting, like our river, their escapement goal is 800 to 1.2 million sockeye to escape into the Naknek. And we literally have people on scaffolding towers on each side of the river. And it's like 10 minutes every hour. They count each side. And there's like this white plexiglass because sockeye swim right along the shore. And they count with a clicker looking down for 10 minutes. And then they extrapolate that into some math problem that's above my pay grade, but that's how they figure it out.
That's amazing. It's a window. There's no tech here. They're literally counting the adult fish as they're migrating up. That's amazing.
It's fascinating, and they're such fun people too, right? You can pull in with guests and they'll go on the tour. One gal that was working there a few years back, she let us climb up on the scaffolding and see for ourselves.
God, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. And that's like such an interesting part about being here through the seasons and how much they change because, into July, these sockeye are starting to make it out of our river and into the headwater streams, or they're kind of circling at the mouth of these headwater streams. So we're still fishing like mouse patterns and streamers and a little bit more traditional on these small flyout streams. And we like hike into places and it's so like active and fun. And then as we sort of get into later July, early August, these fish have kind of gone up into their natal streams, or they're continuing that journey, and they're starting to spawn. And so they've gone from these silver bullets, they look like a coho salmon almost, and then they've completely, in like a month's time, their bodies have turned red, they developed humps, their faces have turned green, they developed these hooked jaws and teeth. So it's completely transformed. It's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
That's so cool. And that's the Sockeye. So, and you mentioned I think you said June 17th, somewhere around there, or June is going to be your first group. What's that look like? So the group that's coming up, are they coming up as the focus for them to like hit Chinook, or is there a diverse of the groups? Is it one group? How does that look like? If we were coming up there mid-June to late July, what would we be hitting?
Yeah, so we are a really small operation. We do 8 guests at a time. So typically it's like a group of 8 or 2 groups of 4. We have, some groups of 2 as well, but it's nice as a small, little intimate experience. So the groups that are coming, we have 2 different groups coming June 17th. They are coming to fish for king salmon for 2 days. And then they like to do 2 flyouts. So they want to go on a small stream, hike into somewhere, and fly fish for trout, dolly varden, grayling. They want to go somewhere beautiful and have that experience, which is very different from the fishing the Nushagak for king salmon. I mean, it couldn't be more different. And so that's a really fun experience, because you're kind of getting like this taste of Alaska, this taste of Bristol Bay, right? A little bit of everything. Like when we're going to the Nushagak, we're flying over the mouth of our river, and you're just seeing like commercial fishing boats everywhere. You see belugas if the tide's in, and then you're like landing on the Nushagak, where you're getting in a boat and you're trolling for king salmon if that's your jam, along with a bunch of other people doing the same thing, and you might see moose and that kind of thing. And then when we fly the opposite way, we're flying upriver into Katmai National Park, or we're flying a little bit south, like off one of our tributaries into Becharof. We're flying sort of into the mountains, right? And so you've got, big lakes that we're flying over. Becharof is like one of the larger lakes in Alaska, and there's volcanoes, and then we're landing on, either a small pond or the big lake, and then hiking upstream or hiking across the tundra to get to the stream. And the rivers are all like wildly clear. So it's a lot of sight fishing. We'll be fishing mouse patterns. We'll be like trying to like not hit the branches on the other side. And if we do, it's like not that deep, so you can walk over and like unhook it and you don't lose a fly, right?
Yeah. And you're fishing mouse patterns is this for rainbows and like other species, or who's that for?
Yeah, so we'll fish it for rainbows. We'll get char and dolly varden to eat them. Grayling will even try to eat them, although it's hard for them to get their little mouth on it. So usually that's just more for fun. But yeah, we'll then, switch to streamers if you want to get a grayling, or even nymphs work that time of year. If we have really nice weather, dry fly fishing is great. All you need really is like a elk hair caddis. You could have like just a few flies in your box and get fish here. They're not as pressured as so many other places.
Yeah, that's it. Remind us again, when we think rainbows, what is the perfect scenario where you're swinging for big rainbows? Is that more of a fall thing, or are you swinging throughout the year for rainbows?
So the rainbows like vary greatly, right? Our small stream rainbows are more of your typical wild rainbow, right? They range from 18 to 24 inches. You get into some that are like, 24 to 26, but they're not like, they don't have like 20-inch girths, right? They're like your typical beautiful rainbow. Although these are leopard rainbows, they're extremely spotted. Their eyeballs are spotted. They're so beautiful and special to this area. And then our fall rainbow fisheries, like on our home water, that's big rainbows. Like everyone wants to get like 30-inch rainbow or bigger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the number. Break the 30-inch mark.
Yeah, we stopped measuring several years ago, like because it's so not important. Like if you get a 27-inch fall rainbow in our home water, it is so special and huge. Like, I mean, these fish will have like an 18-inch girth. It's crazy. So it's like, we don't need to measure this. So this is like that's so not
No.
important.
Just more handling of the fish and more time out of the water, right?
Yeah. And it's like, you don't need to be like, oh, I'm disappointed I got a 27, not a 30.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm pissed. It's only 29 inches. This is terrible.
Yes. You start getting, when you like pull one out of the water that's like 32 inches, oftentimes like, okay, we should measure that because it looks so absurd.
Right. What is the largest fish that you've seen or heard of for a rainbow up there, like lengthwise?
33.
So you're talking 33 is probably over 10 pounds.
Oh yeah. And old, like over 12 years old.
Oh, wow. Old. Yeah. Gosh.
Very old. Yeah. So special and so cool. And like, so worth taking the time to like handle well.
If you had to guess that fish, like kind of what the life history of that fish, what was that 12-year-old fish? Was it living in the lake for, do you know kind of what that thing was doing? How, do they go out, like how far out to the ocean, the bay, the estuary, all that stuff?
These rainbow don't go out into the bay or the ocean.
Oh, at all?
No, not at all. They don't need to because they have, like, our fish are in Naknek Lake, and it's a 40-mile long lake, and it's got lots of deep spots and that kind of thing, but it has tons of tributaries that flow into it, big and small. And so there's lots of food and lots of sockeye smolt growing up in that lake, right, and developing. So there's so much food, and there's eggs coming down like all the time.
Yeah. There's no reason to go out to the ocean where you could be you're a prey for some other giant predator, right?
Yes, you're so safe. You're so safe in this lake for the most part. So yeah, I think they're living a pretty awesome life. Like, they're in Katmai National Park, right? They just gotta avoid the bears and the eagles and just find sockeye, which there's so many, and we've had record returns of sockeye for the last 5 years. So there's like more food than they know what to do with. They're living a good life.
Bearvault is one way to assure your next backcountry trip stays memorable, epic, and safe. Bearvault builds a rugged polycarbonate locking canister that keeps bears and other wild animals away from your food. This in turn keeps your food safe, keeps the bears safe, and keeps you safe. I've got a classic story that I've told a few times about the bear taking my backpack while up in Alaska. I had my lunch and some snacks in there and just went up around the corner to fish for a bit. And when I got back, it was totally gone. If I would have had that Bearvault right at that moment, I would have been okay because my food would have been completely sealed. The bear would have had no idea and no reason to take my backpack. So a good reminder there. You might not realize it, but this type of thing happens all the time, even to experienced outdoorsmen. The great news for us is now we can experience the great stuff of a remote trip without ever having to worry about animals fiddling with our stuff. Sleep soundly knowing your vault has sealed the deal for you. Believe it or not, food storage is a key consideration while backcountry hiking, fishing, or camping. The Bearvault also has some great bonus features like the see-through sidewalls so you can find your stuff really easy, and a large opening, plus it doubles as a nice camp stool. This thing is legit. It definitely is this might be my favorite feature is the camp stool. I love a good chair out there. Check in with the crew at Bearvault at wetflyswing.com/Bearvault. That's Bearvault, BEARVAULT. Okay, back to the show. So we're talking June. Just walk us through. I like to walk through the season because you got, this kind of short season, I guess, maybe not, but you got June and then July, August, September. I mean, when is the season end for you guys up there?
So season ends the middle of October, and we can have really varying weather, but it's a very fun time of year. Things have changed so dramatically, right? From June, when everything's like blooming and budding and green and there's flowers popping up that you haven't seen for a year, right? And this time of year, all the trees have fallen off. We're getting frost. We're losing 45 minutes of light a week. Like, every week we're pushing our start time back. We are putting what we call the sleeping bag over the airplane to keep it warm enough so when we start it in the morning, and by we I mean our pilot Chris, but so it gets its own little sleeping bag over its engine, and then get that thing fired up. It takes a while to warm up. We've got frost on the dock. You got to be careful on the walkways. We're going to breakfast in the dark. Whereas right now and in June, you don't see the darkness. And in fact, if you do, you stayed up way too late. You're not going to be doing good tomorrow, but we don't really see stars until sometime in August, later in August.
Oh, you don't see stars, right? It's just too light up there.
It's too light, so light. 4th of July is so boring here.
Oh man, that's right.
It's just noise.
Gosh. Have you thought about, you're up there for this period. It sounds like you're up there 6 months or more. Have you thought about like long term, like, hey, I can handle living up in Alaska like full time? Is that because we've talked to some people that have made the move and they're up there full time? Is that what you guys are thinking?
It's really fun because there are so many young people that have decided to make this area their home. So there's this really great community of people, and it's certainly intriguing. But I love Oregon and Washington. Like, I love the Northwest, and it really feels like home to me. And I love to fish in the winter, and I think I just love like rain. I don't know, because I choose to be in these areas when they're like, rainy and stuff, but I don't think that I would want a winter here. Like, I'm not a super big snow sports person. I snowboarded for a little while at Mount Baker when I was first fishing, and I just felt like it wasn't my tribe. And I found myself like wanting to go fishing, not really wanting to go snowboarding or skiing or anything like that. So I wouldn't be able to fish here in the winter. And I know you could go ice fishing, but that just doesn't excite me as much as like fishing rivers and floating down rivers. And even when we would spend a couple months in Baja, Mexico fishing, Jess and I would spend like 2 or 3 months in Baja, Mexico fishing for roosterfish many years ago. I always missed the rivers. And when I got back, I was so happy to be on flowing water again.
Right. So even the warmer weather, you were still jonesing to get back to the rain, essentially.
I guess, yeah. Call me crazy, but yeah, I like being on flowing rivers. It's very much a part of who I am.
Yeah. Do you fish when you're hitting winter steelhead? Are you doing like large rivers and super small rivers, everything in between? Or are you focusing on one or the other?
No, that's the beauty of where we are in the winter, and also sort of being on the coast of Oregon. Our rivers are pretty short for the most part, and they are fed by rain, so they're not dependent on rainfall for their flow. So we have to sort of be able to pivot all the time to what is fishable, what's dropping, what's clearing, what's out of shape. So that puts us on small rivers some days and big rivers other days.
Gotcha. So you might be floating with a drift boat one day or the raft the next day, and then maybe walking in the other day.
Yeah. And I think actually saying it out loud, it makes sense. It's similar to my Alaska season in that it's always changing. And that must be part of what keeps me very engaged. Is that like, there's never the same. And it's very rare either place that I'm going and doing the same thing the next day. And I like that. I think it's hard for people unless they're into that, right? They like that change. There's a lot of people that sort of like to do the same thing and have that sort of like daily intimate knowledge.
Exactly. That's it. That's the daily. We have a Jeff Liskay he's kind of doing our Great Lakes stuff on the podcast, and he did an episode which was like Great Lakes steelhead, like intro to step by step. But he was talking about the difference between like the guide and just the normal person. It's not like the guides are that much greater as anglers. Some of them are, but for him it was like, hey, we just know every rock in the river. We know what's going on. We know where to go. Have plan A, B, and C. Right? It sounds like you're the same thing here. It's like you're thinking like, hey, I got to have a plan, right? You got to know what happens if the river blows out or if you get 2 inches that night before versus 1.
Yeah, that's such a big part of it. And here in Alaska, another factor we get is fog that prevents us from flying, like being able to take off from our lodge, or even fog banks that prevent us from going to a certain area. Like last year, we had a lot of fog throughout the season, and there was like an entire week where we couldn't go south. And we kept trying. And we just like hit the bank of fog, like, okay, turn around. And so now what are we going to do? Right. And if you didn't have that experience or that knowledge of like, well, where can we go that's going to be the best fishing that isn't like a really long flight. 'Cause nobody wants to be in the plane any longer than we have to be. So how do we get somewhere that's going to be great fishing fast, or, And so, yeah, being able to pivot like that, and that just comes with experience. I've always said that you can't replace time on the water. And like, to what Jeff Liskay was saying, what an incredible guy that he is. But like, to what he was saying, that is what you get out of a guide, is you can't replace time on the water. Typically, guests don't have a lot of time on the water. They're coming to you, and you have this whole backpack of skill sets that you've developed just by being out there and facing adversity and problem solving and having to figure out, what to do next.
Yeah, exactly. Are people, is there, I mean, you've got lodges, you got your lodge. Are people also up there? Do you see people doing like a DIY sort of thing, coming in, floating rivers, doing all that stuff? Is that possible?
It's possible. We don't see it a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with like bear safety, honestly.
Yeah, right. You guys are in get another capital, right? You're the greatest, probably the most bears, or one of the places.
Yes,
right?
So many world's greatest, Dan.
That's right.
Yes, we have an incredible population of coastal brown bears, and a DIY program is going to have you out there sleeping with them. And then also, Dave, like, just the logistics of doing things here is so complicated, and a lot of our guests, they see it now, like, just because they've learned, because they've, again, like, had experiences with us for a long time, 10 years or something. So they've seen us like have to pivot and problem solve and things like that. And it's really kind of opened their eyes of like, wow, you guys are constantly doing logistics, constant, And so that's a big barrier, like knowing who the players are here to get what you want accomplished. And like if you want to go do a DIY trip and then having the safety, the knowledge of safety with bears and that kind of thing. But yeah, it is possible for sure. Anything's possible.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, you can make anything happen, but yeah, it depends on how much work you want to put into it.
Yeah.
What is the recommended? So I guess if you're fishing for kings, what is the gear you recommend that people are using there? Is it pretty much all spey now for kings?
No, there's a very large group of sport fishermen that use gear.
Oh, gear.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like arguably the best way to catch them.
Yeah. And can you still keep, I mean, that's right, you can still fill 50 pounds of your freezer sort of cooler sort of thing?
So interesting enough, it used to be 5 kings per year if you have a fishing license. And that number has changed this year with, like we were talking about earlier, the decline of king salmon and people bringing to attention the Board of Fish that we have some issues with our king salmon are declining too. And what do we need to do to help prevent their loss? I mean, it would be devastating. It's the state fish. It's the Chinook salmon, So that's changed. But like in Oregon and Washington, there's not like a yearly limit. It's a day limit. But here there's a yearly limit and there is a day limit as well. So it's usually one fish over 28 inches a day. And then depending on the river, depends on how many you can keep a year, but typically not more than 5, 4. And then I think on the regulations changed. But yeah, so you're not filling 50-pound boxes of king salmon, hopefully. But our sockeye salmon fishery is incredible and it's super fun to fish for. It's a great beginner fishery and it's not like these fish are eating. So there's this whole like windmill flossing method. There's nothing beautiful about it, but we use fly rods and it's fun because you're catching them. It's sustainable. And like, people kind of get into there's something that like happens, and it happens to me too, where like I'm not like super into killing fish, but I do like harvesting meat and eating like good meat and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sockeye. It's hard to beat sockeye, right? I mean, that's pretty good salmon.
It's so great. It's the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get like a little bloodthirsty after I like kill the first one, where I'm like, okay, let's bring it. And that like something changes, like it gets like super primal. But I see it with my guests too, right? And they're like, all right, like once one is in, it's kind of becomes this like, we're like a feeding frenzy of piranhas.
It's true. It's true. It is. I mean, we're, think of it, right? I mean, we're animals. That's the funny thing about it. We've had that conversation here before, like with the deer hunting. For me, I do some deer hunting and stuff. I'm not a huge hunter, but same thing, man. You get a deer down and you got your hands, gutting that thing out. It's just like, it's primal. It's like full on, you know what I mean? You're not thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
I think that's what's great about it, right? It brings us back to really where we all kind of should be, right?
Yes.
To a certain extent.
Yes, I don't consider myself a hunter. I consider myself a harvester because I'm not like out there like I'm going to get the biggest elk or I'm going to get the biggest whitetail, right? I want the one that's going to taste really good. And I get that way too. Where I'm like, I get a little primal, like, okay, let's butcher this thing. And I actually enjoy it. And I enjoy like the whole butchering process to like wrapping the meat up or vacuum sealing it, however we're doing it. I guess I really just like to know where my food comes from, and the beginning to end process is important to me.
Right. That's awesome. We talked about probably a lot of the species, but what are we missing here? So you got Chinook, rainbows, grayling, all the char, everything. Are you guys doing, you got coho, pinks, all that stuff too? Do you have all 5 species up there for salmon?
Yes, we do. So, so sometime in July, as our sockeye fishery fades upriver and kind of stops coming in full force, then we're really shifting gears into like small stream and still doing some king salmon fishing. And, we have guests that want to swing flies for kings. So we will do that, but we aren't the like go-to fishery for that, like our home water, because we have huge tidal influxes, like 20 feet. So we don't have these like classic gravel bars. Our river's pretty short for like swinging flies. So we have a pretty cool tributary that we can swing flies on. And then going over to the Nushagak, you can go over there and swing flies. Although you do kind of end up competing with all the boats and that type of thing. But that's definitely a thing. And then, into July, once the sockeye are up, we're fishing for king salmon through the last couple of weeks of July. And it's just sort of like a side thing that we do. It's definitely not the focus. We don't tell people like, come up and you're going to fish for king salmon all week. Like that's just not what we do, right? We want to show guests the whole experience and get a little taste of everything. So we might fly over to one of our other rivers and fish for chum salmon. And that's all catch and release, but it's super fun on a fly rod. They're really aggressive. They pull really hard. They're big.
Are they still pretty chrome, or are they getting some color on them?
Yeah, they're pretty chrome. We try not to fish for them when they're like all colored up, and further up into the river and stuff. We're trying to fish for them in tidal water. They're super, super aggressive and fun. And then as we get into August, we're sort of transitioning now into coho, right? And they are so much fun on a fly rod. You can sight fish for them. You can watch them take your fly like right at your feet kind of thing. We can do a couple of fly outs to different places that are beautiful and spectacular. I was fishing for coho last year, and a caribou swam across the river below us. Right? It was just so epic. And then we could have sort of fished coho into the first week or two of September, which is historically a little late, but that run has seemed like it's getting later and later. So that's kind of fun because they'll start to overlap with the big rainbows on our home water. And, during that time we're doing, we transition now, we're floating certain rivers and fishing for rainbow trout in like really clear streams in Katmai National Park.
Are these like day floats?
Yeah. So we're flying with like these 10-foot rafts.
Oh yeah. Like the air. We just did an episode with Outcast and we talked about air and some of their lineup, but yeah, they got a bunch of cool boats in that range, 10, 11 feet, 9 feet, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we just ordered some Sotars, got some new raft that they're doing that. But yes, we've used the air in the past. We've had Star. And then, these Sotar boats we're really excited about because they're like 25 pounds lighter. And when you're flying 6 guests and 2 rafts and everybody's lunch, and like we do lunch really well. So we got hot soup and then we've got cocktails for the end of the day. We're not going light on these floats, right?
No. Yeah, you're not doing the backpacking food, stuff like that. This is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to like reduce the weight of these rafts because we're strapping them to a float plane, right? And we don't want to go overweight in our plane, like safety first. So, we're landing somewhere, we're like hiking all this stuff up a hill, blowing up the rafts, pushing them down the other side of the hill, and then floating this clear stream looking for giant rainbows in among thousands of sockeye that are bright red, very clear water.
Right. How do you pick those out? If you're floating down in one of these rafts and you maybe see a run or a spot. Describe that. Let's say you hop out and you got all these sockeye. How do you find the rainbow and how do you not snag or do something like that?
Right. Yeah. Well, you want to, first off, don't cast into the sockeye. It's like rule number one. If you see a big pot of sockeye, do not cast into them. Usually those rainbows are sitting right behind them and off of drops and things like that as well. Right. So if there's a bunch of sockeye and then there's a bit of a drop, that's where the rainbows are going to be, somewhere easy. The eggs are just floating into their mouth, essentially. And oftentimes you hook one of these rainbows and they're just vomiting eggs. They're just like, they can't even keep them down. They have so many in their mouth.
What's what's the rod length, all that stuff, length, the rod and the gear you're using for the rainbows?
So this fishery that I'm thinking of, we used to use 6 weights and man, these fish will just kick your butt.
6 weight spay rod.
No, single hand.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So 6, so that is pretty light.
Yeah, like a 9 foot 6 weight. So we just have been kind of like pushing to more of a 7 weight. If we know the fisheries we've been going in a bunch is like kind of all big fish, we switch into 8 weights. But 7 is like still, if you get a smaller, and by smaller I mean like 24-inch, you're not going to be like overgunned. But yeah, in our home water when we're swinging with spay rods, we're using 8 weights. 7 weights too are great. There's some really nice 7 weights these days.
Yeah, there are. So you're not doing the spay swinging for these rainbows up in Alaska with spay?
So on these smaller streams, you can, but not till a little bit later when there aren't as many sockeye. I mean, when I'm talking, there's sockeye in these small streams, they're everywhere, just thousands, like as far as the eye can see. So like if you're nymphing with a bead or something, like you're not getting these long drifts. You're really targeting these areas because if you do, you're just going to hook sockeye all day. That's just part of the deal. There are so many. People can't believe how many there are. Like, it's so incredible to see this resource just like full of sockeye.
Where could you go if somebody was like right now online, they wanted to go look at a video or a photo of these sockeye, like maybe in a stream? Where would you point them?
I think if you go to our Instagram page, you can see bears ripping apart sockeye and you can see all the sockeye around them.
Oh, wow. What's your Instagram page?
The Lodge at 58 North. I think that those videos are pinned to the top.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. Yep. We'll put a link out into this. Yeah, you got some amazing bear. Gosh, so those are the bears. Then you got some cool photos in here. Wow. So this is good. I'm glad I looked at this. Now we're seeing, yeah, and you got some dogs. You got some wolves. You got the float planes. This is really cool. Good. So we'll definitely get people taking a look at that. I wanted to dig in, I think you got the nymphing, right, which is what you're talking about. Then do you eventually get into the swinging in the fall or the mousing? Does it change over where you're actually getting less sockeye and you're able to swing for those fish?
Yes, once those sockeye start dying. So usually right around the second week of September, we'll start transitioning to that swing fishery. And there'll be opportunities late August because these small fly out streams are all different timing, right? So some streams like the sockeye are dying earlier, like earlier in August, and then, some are like way late in September. And that just allows us to have this really diverse fishery where we can go to all these different places as they change. But if you can go to a river that still has some sockeye in it, but isn't just clogged full of sockeye, then you can swing flies for rainbows and kind of pick them out and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's just when these rivers are just chock full of sockeye that if you swing, you can, but you have to like see the fish, target it specifically, and pull it out before you get in front of a sockeye. Because the sockeye will actually go after the fly. Even though they're not eating, it's like territorial and it's in their face and they'll go after it. So you're like, it's a cat and mouse. You're like, I got to get away from that sockeye, but I want to get that rainbow.
Right.
So we really transition into that swing fishery that early September, and that's like kind of when our home water starts to light up, and then a lot of these fly out streams, the sockeye have died and left carcasses. Right, so it's kind of gross, and we get so like jaded, like we just don't even like notice it as much. But there'll just be huge piles under the water of dead carcasses of sockeye. And then the bears are like ripping those up and flesh is floating by.
Fly fishing is always in full swing at Drifthook. Let Drifthook Fly Fishing outfit you with the perfect assortment of flies to prepare for your next adventure. Everything from nips to dry flies, hoppers to streamers, and their Euronip fly kits all are pre-packed in a double-sided water-resistant fly box. These kits ship free directly to your door, ready to start catching some fish. If you're starting out or just looking for additional tips to help you catch more fish, Drifthook.com has over 50 instructional videos and over 200 articles to help you improve your fly fishing game. And I want to reiterate this fact right here that Drifthook has a great resource at the website. Matt has put together some awesome blog posts. And these aren't just flabby blog posts. They are packed with lots of great content to help you on your next adventure, wherever it takes you this year. With over 150 verified 5-star reviews and a 30-day money-back guarantee, Drifthook's family-owned business has you covered. You can order right now at drifthook.com and use the code SWING at checkout to get 15% off your first order. That's Drifthook, Drifthook, drifthook.com, and use SWING, SWING, at checkout to get 15% off your first order. You support this podcast and a great small company right now by checking out that link at Drifthook. Now, what about Justin? Do you have us a little, we'll start to take it out of here in a little bit. I'm curious about Justin. Is he kind of the same as you? You guys are fully, or do you think he could hang out in a winter in Alaska and be okay with it?
No, he's very much like me. I mean, for all of our differences, we're really similar in that. Like, he doesn't want to be here not
ice
being
fishing.
able to fish and doing, like we like being in Oregon. But we do like to stay after the season for a few weeks, and like we call it easing into retirement. Even though we're still like working every day, we're not guiding every day. So we're not like on the set schedule. We're not responsible for people and staff. So we used to sort of experience this. I think it's very common with seasonal fishing guides, this sort of emotional depression, like kind of this downflow of emotions and anxiety and that kind of thing, because you're going from like a very strict schedule and a lot of responsibility, and sort of, even though nothing we're doing is like known, we do know so much about what we're doing. And then we go into like what retired people experience. We're like, oh, now what do I do? I went from like having this thing to now, what do I do with myself and how do I manage that? So one thing that we found is having a home here. We have a wood stove, which there's something like really comforting about that, like putting wood on the fire, and we just sort of like ease out of it, right? So we like, there's so much closing to do, there's so much organizing to do, so we sort of ease back into like this like pace where we are not responsible for a lot of people, not on this schedule of like, now we get in the airplane and fly places, or now we get in the boat. We kind of ease into that. It takes a few weeks, and then we sort of avoid that weird emotional downturn and kind of like get to stay more steady, and then can go into whatever we're going to do after that. We usually like to go hunting in Montana with our friends.
Yeah, that's great. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, they kind of and then you hop in, and then you get down back to the lower 48. Now you're getting back into it, the guiding. But maybe is the guiding,
Yeah.
How does that compare when you're guiding for winter steelhead versus the Alaska? Is it totally different?
It is totally different. We do 4 guests at a time. We run a really small lodge. Our chef from here is our chef there. So it's myself guiding, Justin guiding, and then our chef. So it's just the 3 of us. And then we have a local housekeeper come in. She's great. And so it's very, very intimate. And the difference is we're rowing a boat every day. We might row 10 to 15 miles. And so it's like very physical, like upper body physical. And like it's different because I'm not like walk and wade. I mean, every day here I might be doing something different. I'm running a jet boat. I might be running like one of our 21-foot jet boats one day, going salmon fishing, and then the next day I'm hiking 6 miles or 7 miles somewhere, fishing and hiking out. And then it's just so different here, constantly changing. And there it's the same, but I'm going to different rivers. And I might be in a drift boat one day and a raft the next day. Although I'm constantly just trying to be in the drift boat because it rows so much better than a raft.
Oh, yeah. What drift boats do you guys have, or what do you have there?
Clacka craft.
Yeah, you got the Clacka. Is that like a 16 or footer?
So 18 foot and, or I'm sorry, no, 16 foot. I was thinking right jet boat. They're 16 foot, but they're the big eddies.
Yeah, the big eddies.
Yeah, so super light, little higher sides than the eddy, which is good because we do some more rapids and stuff like that. But it's such a light boat. It's really nice.
What is the biggest thing do you like about fiberglass? They're light, and then also, what are there any other benefits of the fiberglass?
Well, it's like way warmer, much quieter. A lot of our boat launches are not your typical like boat launch where you just pull up and you push your boat off your trailer into the water right there. We actually have a lot of constructed boat ramps that are just like these wooden slides, we call them, made by our local fishing association. So you're like roping your boat down a slide.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, you don't want to let go of the rope because that wouldn't be because some of them are long, right?
Yes, very long. You don't want to lose your boat. And I'm the only female fishing guide on the North Coast. So
really, you're the only female fishing guide
on the North Coast.
Now, why is that? Because that seems, we've had this conversation quite a bit over the years, just the 50-50 and all this stuff, right? But that seems kind of crazy to me. Why do you think that is? Is it just because it's too cold and too wet?
Oh my gosh, Dave. No, that's not why. And like my ladies from Alaska, when they come fish with me, they're like, why don't we see more women? Because it's so common to see women in Alaska, although it's not very common to see them guiding. Like when I first started guiding up here, there's only 2 other women guiding. And now there's probably a dozen. So over the last 5 years, we've seen that grow, but like a dozen is not very many.
No, it's still 9-1, right? Or whatever.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's still ridiculous. We actually hired 2 women this year to train to be fishing guides. So I'm very excited about that for the lodge. The feature of the lodge is very cool. But I think in Oregon, so we see lots of women fishing in Alaska. We don't see as many women fishing on our rivers in Oregon. And we definitely don't see very many women rowing boats. I like never see a woman rowing a boat. And if I do, they're learning or something like that. But I think that there is a huge barrier to entry in that, like, one, like, how do you go learn how to row one of these rivers? Like, they're intimidating rivers to row. And it's not like the men folk out there, like, super welcoming, like, wanting, like, inviting women to come out and learn how to row these rivers. And also steelheading is so secretive, right? Like no steelhead fishing guide is like, oh yeah, come learn how to do this from me, right? Like the amount of time that each fishing guide out there, my colleagues and myself have put in so much time to learn what we've learned, like how to navigate these rivers, where to put in on what day, and how to fish them. Like it's not something that you just give away for free,
No.
Or just give away in general. Like no steelhead fisherman gives away anything. Like so shady. But I think that there's like this huge barrier to entry. I mean, when I was the first several years, every day I got comments from people, and it wasn't mean or malicious. It was just ignorant because they never saw women. But like oftentimes they're like, "Wow, way to give the old man a break." And stuff like that. Or I sometimes get it where they're like, how do you get her to do that to the people? And I'm always like, they pay me really well.
Yeah.
Or how do I get my wife to do that? I'm like, you should pay her more, dude. But I think that's there's just a lot of barriers to entry, and women haven't been historically welcomed into that space. So unless you like don't care, or you have like somebody that's willing to mentor you, somebody selfless and like give you that opportunity. But like, I don't have any women reach out to me and like, hey, I want to be a steelhead guide. Can I come learn from you? I've never had any woman reach out to me and ask me that, because honestly, the right person, I'd be like, yes, please. I don't want to row a boat 5 days a week. Like I have so much to do. I'm like, I don't want to guide 12 months a year. I have a lot going on. There's other things. I love to paint. Like I don't get any time to paint. So yeah.
There you go. So if there's a woman listening right now, which we do have a chunk of women in the audience, and they were thinking about becoming a guide, they might want to give you a call and check in with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's sweet.
They want to be a steelhead guide.
I love it. No, I think it is. It's a interesting conversation for me. It hits home hard because, I have two young daughters, and I'm always thinking like, hey, I'm not forcing them to do anything, but I always want, to give them opportunity. And it's great. I actually talked to my youngest daughter the other day. I actually do this kind of fun, another podcast I do, and we were chatting about things on there with her. And she said, I asked her like, what was her favorite thing to do? And she's like, I really love the river trip, and it was so cool because I was like, okay. And I got some new oars, some new square top oars. They're super light. So my hope is that they will be rowing the boat, not too long. So I think for them, it maybe is easier because I'm kind of the person that's helping them. I mean, for you, what was it? Was it, how did you get into this whole thing?
I fell in love with salmon, really, in Washington on the Olympic Peninsula. And my friends took me salmon fishing, and I was just so present. I'd never been that present in my young adult life. And so I think that was what I was searching for. And that fishing gave me the opportunity to really just be present and be myself. And then just like the mystery of a salmon, like getting to see something that you don't know exists unless you catch it, right? You don't know it's there unless you catch it. And then like kind of getting to hold and touch something so majestic, right? Having that intersection. And the first salmon I caught, I let go, and everybody was just like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And I had no idea. I didn't know anything about catch and release. I was just like, oh, this is my opportunity to connect with this creature. And I'm just so thankful for it. I let it go. And they're like, no. And also I grew up in Virginia, so we didn't eat fish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Virginia. Cool.
Yeah, like we ate burgers, we ate like beef and venison.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And chicken. Like we didn't eat fish. So then the second one I caught, I kept, and I developed this like love of the taste of them. But something about letting that first one go has held like some pretty significant reverence for that fish. And that very much influenced my path. And I've been fishing ever since that day.
That was it. And then what was the connection from down to the the winter steelhead?
Well, I think that for a Northwesterner steelhead salmon fisherman, Alaska is like Mecca. It's the place where we haven't messed it up yet. And everywhere in the Northwest, they're constantly being shown how we've messed it up. We have everywhere, really. And so Alaska is like this opportunity to see what the Northwest was like, and maybe even give us optimism for what it can be like in the future if we continue to do things well, like taking out dams and that kind of thing, but also just by being better humans and stewards of the environment. And that was the draw. And the opportunity to be a fishing guide would never have been a possibility for me if it wasn't for my friend Dan. And he had worked for the first female sport fishing guide in Alaska and in Bristol Bay. And she was in need of a guide, and he put in a really good word for me. She gave me my first chance, she and her husband, and at a time where no lodges would hire a female. Now lodges are like they have one woman on staff here or there. There's still lodges that don't and maybe won't, but I was very well aware that nobody would have given me that opportunity. So and then to be given that opportunity with this amazing woman as my mentor who had seen it all, right, and had done it at a time where it was even more crazy to be a woman in this industry and in this environment, and how she had to be the best. And that's one thing that I do tell like aspiring female guides, like, you have to be better than everyone else. And that's like across everything.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah, you have to be a really good person. Like, you have to be a steward of other women, and you can't be competitive. Like, you have to be kind.
Exactly. What I think about the analogy is like Obama. It's the perfect thing, because think of this guy, the first, black president. And I mean, that he couldn't make a single mistake, because if he would have done anything wrong, right, it would have been this massive thing. So he was the perfect, you know what I mean? And it's kind of the same thing. What you're saying is like, literally, because you're put on this thing, right? Oh, is the woman going to do it, right? You're like, you got to be perfect. Is that kind of what you're saying a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt that stress in the beginning years. Like, now I don't have that stress, because I've been doing it for so long and like, I don't care anymore. Right. But at first I felt that like, I felt the weight of that responsibility to women that wanna do this, or just women in general. Like I needed to be the best and I couldn't mess up, and I still feel that sometimes, but I don't have weight there, where it's like I want to be the best because I want to be the best version of myself, not because of anything other than that. So, but I think it's really important, it's really important for women in this industry. And I think we're seeing that across the industry, like with groups like United Women on the Fly and what Heather Hodson is doing. I mean, it's phenomenal, and it's really helped grow women in the sport and have them find a place that they can be a part of this sport and then grow into being fishing guides and that kind of thing and sort of break those barriers.
Yep. I'll put a link to the show notes to the episode we had with Heather. That was awesome. And we had some other ones with George Cook on Chinook. We've got a number of things we've talked about today. I'll put some resources to dig in. Who was that mentor? You said the person that she helped you get started at the lodge.
Her name is Nancy Morris Lyon.
And is she still around?
Yeah, she runs a lodge on the same river, the one I used to work for. She and her husband, and actually her daughter is now graduated from college and has been guiding, and she's turning Riley Lyon. She's turned out to be a great fishing guide, and she's maybe going to take over the lodge. And it's really exciting to see. It's like when I first started working for Nancy, Riley was 10. And then, she became a housekeeper, and I was like, Riley, you should be a fishing guide. Like this is like way more fun than being a housekeeper, dude. And so to see her doing it, and of course being really successful and well loved, and then her husband, she just recently got married, is a float plane pilot. So very so Alaskan. I love that family so much.
That's great. Well, let's take it out of here. We've got the this little segment, our Fly Shop Friday segment, and this is presented by Dette Flies. I always love to give a shout out to one of our partners. Dette Flies are like the oldest fly shop in the country, on the other side of the country. But do you have a local fly shop? I got a couple, just some random questions here. Who would be is there like either Alaska or down lower 48? Is there a shop that you think of? It seems like you guys are probably pretty remote up there, not much going there.
Yeah, we don't have a fly shop here in King Salmon, and we don't have a fly shop on the north coast of Oregon, but we have a lot of friends that own fly shops, and super proud to support those. Like in Oregon, the Gorge Fly Shop.
Oh yeah, Travis.
Yeah, Travis, and our friend Charlie is managing that now, so that's always a fun company to support. And then in Anchorage, we have Mossy's Fly Shop, and they've been really nice to work with and just great people.
Yeah, the Anchors. I've heard a lot about that fly shop, actually. A lot of people have noted that over the years, how they love that place.
Yeah, they're really nice and knowledgeable. And when you go in there, it's a small shop, and you go in there, you're going to run into somebody, it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. What is I was going to run down and hold you and say, hey, what are your top species in Alaska? Give you your top 10 or whatever, if you had to fish for them. But
Stop it, Dave.
I know. That's a little hard. I know you're that's a hard one, so I won't call you there. But just give me your one. If you had to say, hey, it's me fishing, on my own, like you said, anytime, what would that be for you?
I really enjoy hiking into small streams and fishing mice for rainbow trout in the summer, June and July. I certainly love that fall swinging rainbows, and that's used to always be my favorite. But as that fishery has become more busy, and just as I really enjoy like the exercise of like hiking into places and getting away from people and really being immersed in the natural world, like I'm going to see bears, I'm going to see eagles, I'm going to see them doing whatever they do, like in a really intimate setting. Or beavers, just all of that. I love that. And so when I get to kind of really hike further into small streams, I can find those experiences. And then I just love fish and mouse patterns for those rainbows. And I don't even have to hook them just to see them come up, or to like tease them out from underneath logs and that kind of thing. It's definitely a favorite of mine.
Do you have a mouse pattern you like to use? Is there a named one you think of?
Yes, I love Rio's Pipsqueak. It's designed by Patrick Kilby, I think is his last name. He and Britta Fortis are there at far bank. I guess they just got this room where they tie flies and do inventions. And I love like thinking about those two, coming up with new ideas and patterns and just like tying away. And I have this like fantasy imagination of what their world is like there. And, and they're always fun to like, share a fly with us to try and things like that. But that mouse pattern, those two sent us a couple of years ago, and it's been my go-to ever since. It doesn't hook the fish deep, usually like right at the lips, and they've got a bunch of different sizes, but it floats really well. It doesn't really get beat up like a lot of those other mouse patterns get beat up, or they hook the fish deep. And I know a lot of people have been adjusting those to prevent that, but I just had a lot of success with that pipsqueak, and they, like I said, they last a long time, and that's really important up here because it's hard to get things.
Yeah, it's got to be able to take some abuse, some fish biting on it and missing it and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, yes.
Right on, nice. So a couple more here, and then we'll take it out of here. I always like to ask a kind of a podcast or music. Do you listen on your, more podcasts or more music when you're out there, or wherever?
I'm more music. Yeah, I love music. I'm not like super musically talented, but I'm like trying to learn how to play guitar, and I just love all kinds of music. So I'm pretty varied taste that way, and I like to create playlists.
On like Spotify or Apple?
I've been using Amazon.
Amazon, okay.
But I've been using that for some reason. I was on Apple for a while, and I do have Spotify, but there's something, I don't know, ease of use, but I love creating playlists, and then I like kind of matching those to flying around in the float plane or running a boat around, because I always try to wear safety headsets, and protect those ears. That's just a PSA for people running boats and stuff. Protect your ears, because we didn't used to, and I think we're all seeing the effects of that.
Right. Yeah, ear protection is good. Right. Okay. Do you have a band or a group or something like that? We could put a link in the show notes so people can listen to some as they take it out of here.
No.
Huh?
I can't do that. That's too hard.
Is it really? Like, are you like classic rock, country? What would be your one type of? Are you 80s music, 2000? Like, is there a subtype of, right?
Okay.
Anything?
Well, like yesterday morning, I was listening to country, and then yesterday afternoon or evening on the way home, I was listening to Post Malone, and this morning I was listening to Pink when I was working out. So
okay, Pink.
It's like nobody.
It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. Yeah, it's like, what am I feeling in the moment? This playlist, and that's why I like to create playlists, because I like to keep it interesting. And I love Elton John.
Oh, Elton John, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. I was just going to say, maybe we'll throw a Pink video in there and Elton John just to double up on it on this one.
I think that's the first time I've listened to Pink in years, but I was like, I like wake up with like songs in my head that I like have to listen to that music.
Yeah, perfect. What's your piece of gear up there in Alaska that you like don't leave home without? What's the one thing you got to have in the backcountry besides the you talked about the inReach thing? Besides that, what else?
I was just say inReach device.
Yeah.
I never leave home without my sunglasses and my rain jacket.
Yeah, your rain jacket. Yeah, that's it.
I forgot my rain jacket one time in 16. I think it was my 16th year of guiding. I forgot my rain jacket one time. I'll never do it again.
No, that's the amazing thing. I love the gear because now there's just so much good gear. It's comfortable. You can put it on, you get that rain jacket shell over the top of whatever your layers are. And you're just, it really doesn't matter how, right? Unless it's super like below zero, you're pretty much good to go out there.
So good to go. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. When I first started guiding, there wasn't like a good women's rain jacket or even women's waders.
Who do you go with? Who do you go with on your waders and rain jacket for women's stuff?
Patagonia. So I'm a Patagonia fly fishing ambassador, and I've been a part of their design, which is my favorite part of working with them.
Oh, wow. Cool.
The new rain jacket, the women's Swiftcurrent rain jacket, is like the ultimate rain jacket. I've been testing and helping the designer, Kaylee Clay, with that for years.
Oh, this is so cool.
It's like the best rain jacket out there for women. It hits all the points. And I've seen them all and worn them, and it's the best. It's like the techiest. And The old river salt was great too. This just taking the river salt up to the next level.
Where would somebody go? Because I'm kind of feeling my own itch here. If I wanted to get that Jack of the Swiftcurrent, where would I go to get it? Where's the best place?
Patagonia. Patagonia sell direct. I don't know what fly shops carry it, so that's my bad. But maybe the Gorge and maybe Mossy sells them. I have no idea. But the women's Swiftcurrent I don't think is out quite yet. But the river salt but the men's Swiftcurrent is, and that's also, I mean, kind of same design but for men. But it's really great. And then like the new waders, there's all these like zip up waders. Like Patagonia has this new expedition wader for women, so it's like super heavyweight. I mean, I've been wearing the men's wader for a long time because it's the heaviest weight. So now it's an expedition weight wader for women. So all the women that are out there like fishing hard and bushwhacking and in and out of boats and walking away and doing all the things, this is a super heavy wader, and it has a zip front, and it's designed for women. So kind of thoughtfully designed with our bodies in mind and our shapes and that kind of thing. We're so lucky to have such great gear now that's like comfortable, makes us feel good, and hits all the check marks, you know?
I love it. Yeah. Like I said, my daughters are 9 and 11, you know, so they're still pretty young, but they were saying that the other day, like, hey, a pair of waders would be great. Right. So I think that's one of the things
awesome.
I need to, so I got to get them, figure that out. I'm not even sure who has the kids, the smaller waders, but I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you know, I had my dad's waders, like his, and I would roll them down like, you know, adult waders, and I made them fit me when I was probably that age. So like, probably not the safest thing to do. Cool. Well, this is awesome. What would be your advice? And we're just wrapping this up here, but your advice. So somebody's listening now, maybe a female potential guide or somebody listening. What would be your advice to her or them? Like, you know, they want to be a guide. Like, what would you tell them?
Well, I think that my advice would be that you can't replace time on the water. So you need to be fishing all the time. And like, that means after work and on the weekends, like you really need to let it consume you in a healthy way, but like maybe in an unhealthy way. Like you need to get that time and that experience so that you can be the best, one of the best guides out there, you know? And also you need to ask yourself, do you love serving people? Because our job is less about making people like get fish and that kind of thing. It's really about serving people in these wild places. And that, you know, means taking care of them and nurturing them in a way that they are getting to be themselves and feel comfortable and safe, and also learning something and sort of being a part of this pristine environment and learning to love it and take care of it. Like that's really our role, I think, as fishing guides, is to serve people in a way that helps them fall in love with these spaces and want to be the next steward for it. And then also, so it's a 3-part. If they check that box, like, okay, I can find myself getting on the water every moment that I can to get that experience. And then, yes, I love people and I want to be part of that. I want to be the bridge for them to this natural world. And I want to serve them and make sure that they feel good in these spaces. And then the third thing would be to find somebody that will mentor you and teach you, like really understanding, like, where am I deficient? You know, what do I need to learn? And then finding people, because there are so many people out there that love to teach and share their knowledge. There's a lot of grandpas out there that have a lot of fishing experience and like love to share that with people. Find those people, whoever they are, men or women, and like learn from them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Perfect. And just a quick one. We don't have a ton of time to dig in deep, but on Bristol Bay, we mentioned that earlier. So we had a good place with Bristol Bay and all that, the pebble
We're
mines.
in a great place. Yes, we're in a great place. So the EPA has enacted 404C of the Clean Water Act, and that's basically not going to allow mining in these sensitive areas. So while the Pebble Partnership will be challenging this in court, we feel really confident that that this is going to stand up. Now, it is an EPA regulation, and that changes from administration to administration. So it's very important for people to see that this is very much a bipartisan thing, and that it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on, whatever you believe, it doesn't matter. Like, very extreme Republicans, very extreme liberals all agree it's the wrong mine in the wrong place. And so it's like, let's take this opportunity to celebrate that we have a lot of differences and there's a lot of like hate and that thing towards one another in this realm. But here's one place where we agree, and let's celebrate that for a change, that we've agreed on something and shake hands across the aisle and like carry that into the future of administrations, so that we're just making it clear that this is not a political fight. This is a wilderness and a cultural fight. And so let's just make sure that that we continue to support the anti-pebble campaign and really don't turn our eyes away from it, because it's billions and trillions of dollars in the ground and it's not going anywhere until that land is protected in some way to ever be mined. This fight is not going away. So it's really important that we keep an eye on this. And we've got great groups that are doing that. And I'm so proud to partner with them.
That's right. No, that's well said. I think we could leave it there and wrap this one up. And I'll just we'll send everybody out to thelodge@58north.com if they want to connect with you and either book a trip or just pick your brain. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun, Dave. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate your time, Kate. We'll keep in touch with you and check back with you soon.
Okay, thanks.
There we go. wetflyswing.com/470. wetflyswing.com/470. Take a look right now at Kate's operation, see what they have going, see what they have coming, and see what they have available for trips this year. Quick reminder, you can support this podcast super easy by checking in with our sponsors right now. Any sponsor, just click a website, click a link, and take a look at some of the great products, whether you need waders, boots, boats, rods, you name it, we got you covered. Check it out right now. Quick listener shout out before we get out of here. Ken Reynolds sent me a nice message, and here it is. Ken said, "Thank you for the podcast, Dave. I listen often during my week. A little background on my fishing. I have always wanted to fly fish for years, had a rod and reel for over a decade, but finally started fishing with it this last year consistently. I fish 2 to 3 times per week for a local sea run off the beaches in Seattle area. So much fun. I also fish for bass from a Jackson kayak in my local lakes. The problem I have for both species is recognizing the strike. I hold my finger over the line to attempt to feel the strike and keep my rod tip low towards the water so I can see changes in between strips. I still seem unsuccessful and seem to miss strikes. If possible, maybe you could offer some suggestions or tips, please. Thank you in advance, and keep the podcast going strong. Best regards, Ken. Ken, this is a great question. I've already teed it up, and you will have the answer coming soon on an upcoming episode. I'm also going to check in with a guest that I have coming up this week, and I'm going to ask this question. So stay tuned for an answer. You're going to have to wait a little bit because I want to make sure to get the expert exact answer for you. So thank you for showing your support and checking in. If you want to get a shout out on this podcast, you can do that right now. Just send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, and I will check in with you right there. All right, Alaska, and where are we going next? I'm going to leave that open right now, and I'm going to get out of here because we got some other good stuff to take in and do right now. I'm just going to wish you right now a great afternoon, a great evening, or a great morning, wherever in the world you are right now, and I appreciate you for stopping in today and listening to the very end. Looking forward to catching you on the next episode. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.